William has a streak of ruthlessness in his nature that makes him a very good leader. No assurance that the marriage is going to survive. And he needs to position himself in such a way that if there is a divorce or if there is a separation, that she cannot use his violence against.
A shocking claim has surfaced, suggesting that Prince William once considered a drastic response to the ongoing chaos surrounding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle.
Today, the mainstream media finally catching up with what Lady Colin Campbell and myself have been saying for some time. There is a way for Prince William to strip Prince Andrew of his official title. But actually, what is far more interesting is that this is the blueprint that the Prince of Wales is considering, not for Andy, but Prince Harry, his own brother. So we'll get reaction and analysis from Lady C in just one moment. But first, here is how the Daily Telegraph reported on this story. And remember, Daily Telegraph, the establishment royal newspaper, so this was of some significance. Prince no more. How William could strip Andrew of his title. A new book full of excruciating stories about the Duke of York's sex life and financial dealings places pressure on the future king to act. And the newspaper reports there is a mechanism the Duke of York may not be pleased to learn, by which Parliament can remove not just a dukedom, but even the title of prince. It would need legislation followed by royal assent from the king, but it is nevertheless technically possible. It would be complicated, blockbuster headline news, and would need the quiet, unofficial backing of the palace. But as a new biography about Prince Andrew and his ex-wife lays out every scandal, indiscretion, and excruciating moment of bad manners over his lifetime, courtiers would be forgiven for swatting up on what is possible. The mechanisms open to a future King William to go further are much more extensive than is generally reported. He has the option to decline to invite his uncle to his future coronation. It would be headline news, but there is a precedent. The Duke of Windsor was excluded from both George and Elizabeth's and rather different circumstances of living in exile after abdication. A king can, in certain circumstances, remove the Order of the Garter, which is in the monarch's personal gift. Parliament has greater powers. It can remove the dukedom via legislation. A private member's bill to give the monarch powers to remove titles, mooted in 2022 after the people of York argued they did not want to be associated with the Duke, fell flat. But a government bill to do the same job would doubtless fare much better. Should another attempt with the heft of the government behind it be more successful, Prince Andrew's name could eventually be struck off the roll of the peerage, where it is currently listed under York. So, Lady Colin Campbell, I know you probably don't think this is fair for Prince Andrew, but what I guess was most interesting for me about this story is it is revealing the establishment plan that is going to be in place for Prince William to effectively thrust Harry out of the royal family. This is what the Prince of Wales wants to do once he is in.
I can hardly blame him. I mean, the reason why in 1917 the titles were stripped from the Duke of Albany and the Duke of Cumberland was that they were traitors to the British nation. Well, also, may I point out that, which I'm sure you're aware of, the mechanism of stripping people of their titles. The titles can then be restored upon an application, and if it's judged that they should be restored, they can be restored. I mean, the fact that the Dukedom of Albany and Cumberland have never been restored is that the Duke of Coburg and Prince Ernst of Hanover have never applied for them to be taken out of abeyance. But there's not only the carriage that we're speaking about, which with say not only Andrew but Harry, York and Sussex, that has to be done by Parliament. But the king, with a stroke of the pen, can, and I've said this for ages, as you know, I've said it to you on your show on more than one occasion. The king, with a stroke of a pen, can do what George V did in 1917, when not only did he sort of rejig things in terms of the and this is separate from stripping people of their peerages. He, with the stroke of a pen, removed the right of the great-grandchildren of the monarch to be princes and princesses. And there's a very obvious case, which was Prince Alistair of Connaught. Prince Alistair of Connaught was Prince and Princess Arthur of Connaught's son, and the Duke of Connaught's grandson, who was Queen Victoria's favorite child. And he stripped Alistair of his princely rank with a stroke of a pen, and he simply became the Earl of Macduff, as a result of his mother being the Duchess of Fife in her own right. So that's how he actually ended up being anything but Lord Alistair whatever. And so the king can actually, with the stroke of a pen, any king can decide, well, I'm going to alter the way the princely rank works, because it was altered, as I say, in 1970 by George V. And it can be altered again with the stroke of a pen, because the king is the fount of honor. I should say the monarch is the fount of honor in this country. And he has or she has the power to alter who is entitled to what. And with a stroke of they can simply come up with new rules.
Yes, so Lady C, what you're saying then, presumably, is that this would not just apply to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, but, and this is certainly what I'm hearing from William's side, it would apply to Archie and Lily too.
Oh, without a doubt, because without a doubt, I mean, I don't know what rule they'll come up with to justify doing it, but if Harry is caught in the net, Harry's the big fish. The little fish are definitely going to be caught in the net, because those children, in much the same way that when George V altered the rights of the descendants of the monarch, Prince Alistair of Connaught, whose parents were both royal highnesses, he ceased overnight to be a prince, and thereafter was never royal. He was, because when he acceded to the title to the dukedom of Connaught, he wasn't His Royal Highness the Duke of Connaught. He was just His Grace the Duke of Connaught. So if Harry is stripped of his princely rank, the children cease to have any entitlement whatsoever to princely rank. And let's remember, there has been a lot of resentment behind the scenes in royal circles for the way that Meghan and Harry announced that the children were now prince and princess, bouncing the family into having to go along with the announcement that they had made, failing which there would have been a huge international stink and a hue and cry in the run-up to the coronation.
I guess they were hoping, Lady C, this is the problem. King Charles always hopes for a logical, rational conclusion. So he thought, well, surely my son...
The allegation that William allegedly spoke about using violence against him a phrase now being interpreted by some as a symbolic or even literal plot to remove Harry, Meghan, and their children Archie and Lilibet from the royal orbit. It's the kind of headline that feels straight out of a palace thriller, but the fallout is all too real. The feud between Harry and William has gone from strained sibling rivalry to full-blown estrangement. Harry's memoir Spare already painted William as aggressive, describing physical altercations and bitter clashes behind palace doors. Now, with this latest allegation, the question grows louder. Has the royal rift reached a point of irreversible hostility?
And my daughter-in-law, given they've been so anti the royal family, don't want their children to become a prince and princess. He thought that almost they would make the decision and then it could be something mutual. But that's not going to happen. This is going to have to be done in a difficult way. But I am very delighted seeing the Daily Telegraph at least starting to put out there what we've been saying for a long time, because mark my words, William is a no-nonsense guy. He is not going to put up with this rubbish. He will speak to the Prime Minister of the day. I do believe this will happen.
Well, William, and I'm going to use a word that some people will think is pejorative, but in this context, it's actually complimentary. William has a streak of ruthlessness in his nature that makes him a very good leader. And William does not pussyfoot around. William, for instance, when that whole business with Marlene Headley came about, if you remember, with our Susan Hussey, William, to preserve the Earthshot Awards, and because he was on a plane to the United States of America when Ngozi Fulani came up with all the nonsense that she did about racism at the palace, if you remember what I'm speaking about.
Oh, yes, I do. That woman.
Yes. And in her native costume that actually had nothing to do with any national country whatsoever. But we won't. The point I'm making is that William understood the importance of immediately throwing water on the fire. And even though Sue Hussey got splashed, he also knew that it was a bit unfair to Sue Hussey, but ultimately she would be on board with the really rather difficult decision he had to make. And indeed, she was on board with it. And the whole situation was tremendously unfortunate, but it showed that William has a backbone of steel. And if he has to splash you, he will splash you. And Harry and Meghan have set themselves up as the enemies of the British monarchy. I mean, really, Meghan is the one who has done it, and Harry has gone along.
Yeah.
And it is an untenable and stupid position. But I mean, she for somebody who thinks she's very clever, she's really incredibly stupid in her demeanor and her objectives, because she never actually achieves what she wants except attention. She gets the attention, but not the positive attention she wants. She gets negative attention.
Yeah.
But
and it's not attention that she's actually successfully monetizing, which is really interesting to me. Lady C, I've got to talk to you about the other big royal story of the week, which was the publication of Andrew Lowney's book about Prince Andrew, entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York. But I specifically wanted to ask you about Prince Harry's denial, because, you know, when Omid Scobie, that very odd-looking Michael Jackson lookalike, published that terrible claim that Charles and Catherine were indeed racist, didn't hear a word from Harry. But when it came to this book, the moment that there was this claim that Harry had left Prince Andrew with a bloody nose and that Andrew had also said some terrible things about Meghan, he immediately ran to People magazine saying that he denies this. And, you know, it was a spokesperson. We know that he communicates with People magazine directly by email. I mean, they've admitted that before, saying, I can confirm neither of these things are true. Prince Harry and Prince Andrew have never had a physical fight, nor did Prince Andrew ever make those comments about the Duchess of Sussex to Prince Harry. Why do you think he did this? And do you think there's any truth about this? Because I will come to this in just one moment, Lady C, but remember, there is a lot of evidence that Prince Harry is a very violent guy.
Well, one of my oldest and closest friends, who is a lord, and he's saving it for his memoirs, but it's been a source of amusement with us for years, because Harry saw him at something. This is decades ago, long before Meghan. Harry saw him at something, and Harry, who was pretty drunk or stoned at the time, tried to attack him. And he said, and I can't use the language that he said on this forum, but he basically said with very blue words, come, you little something or the other, come, you know, because he had been a boxing blue at Eton. And if I'm not mistaken, he's the person who ended up, something happened at Eton and they had to ban boxing because he was actually very happy for Harry to sort of lay a few blows on him. But Harry was being restrained by his security people, his protection officers. But while Harry was being restrained, he was saying, come, 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 and really trying to say, you know, so Harry, and that's just one of many incidents that I know of where Harry has shown himself to be, shall we say, trigger happy, and so I have no doubt that there is something to the story. Let me put it that way.
Yes.
And notice Prince Andrew, who is the one who would have been defamed. Harry wouldn't have been defamed. Harry's supposedly the victim in all of this. But Prince Andrew hasn't denied it.
Nope. No.
Let's remember that. If it's defamatory of anyone, it's not defamatory of Harry, it's defamatory of Andrew. And Andrew has completely ignored it.
I mean, it's also quite ironic, isn't it, Harry getting annoyed about someone revealing physical fights between members of the royal family, given that's exactly what he did in Lady C. Because I'm really sick and tired of Harry always acting as if he is not the physical aggressor. Because he did that in Spare, didn't he? He made it very, very clear that it was William who was the physical aggressor. And there's one example that was pointed out this week by Meghan's mole. And it was when the Foo Fighters drummer Taylor Hawkins, now he's sadly departed now, the world, recalled the time that Prince Harry had assaulted him. And according to Taz, posted, Harry has always been a nasty piece of work. He slapped Taylor around the face, knowing that his security would let him get away with it and block any retaliation. Harry's been protected his whole life. That's why he's not a nice man. How many other stories had been buried? And Lady C, I remembered this interview with Taylor Hawkins, and I wanted to go back and see for myself exactly what he had said, because obviously it's really tragic too when you think Taylor Hawkins now isn't with us. He died, and he was a very, very talented guy. And when you go back and you watch this interview with Howard Stern, it is very clear, Lady C, Taylor Hawkins is not joking around about this. He was disgusted about the fact that Prince Harry, totally unprovoked, physically assaulted him.
What makes this even more incendiary is the suggestion that Meghan and the Sussex children are part of the removal narrative. Critics argue that this exposes a chilling truth, that the institution may view Harry's entire family as a liability, a threat to royal stability that needs to be sidelined at any cost. For supporters of Meghan and Harry, this reinforces their claims of being pushed out, cornered, and abandoned. Of course, context matters. Was using violence a literal threat? Or was it exaggerated rhetoric reflecting William's fury and frustration with his brother? Some analysts insist this is more about symbolic removal, cutting ties, blocking influence, and ensuring Harry and Meghan remain isolated from the inner workings of the monarchy. But in the world of royal scandals...
Watch this and I'll get your reaction off the back.
Hanging with Prince Harry? What is that like?
We have hung out with him before.
Really? And what do you guys do?
Taylor in the face one time. How hard was that smack in the face?
Pissed me off, actually.
Why, you didn't bow to him or something? What happened?
No,
you didn't bow?
we literally were doing something similar to this, but not similar to this. We were playing somewhere in England, and we had just flown over, and like literally had like 2 hours sleep, and we were doing a show in some ambassador's backyard or something. And he walked in, Harry, and a bunch of his people around him, and he goes, "How you doing?" And I'm like, "I can't wake up. So tired. I gotta play. I can't wake up." He just goes, "Bam!"
What the?
And I went, "You mother." And then it's like two guys are like right there, and he's like, "You're awake now," or something like that. I'm like, "Yeah."
I mean, number one, God rest his soul, Taylor Hawkins, very talented musician, but Lady C, that is out and out physical assault by Prince Harry.
Well, yeah, but let's not forget that Bunter Wooster, in his memoirs, he's now the present Duke of Beaufort. He describes a party where his father actually was still alive. So his father was still the Duke of Beaufort, and he was only the Marquis of Worcester. And he describes a party where Harry actually practically ruined the party. And it's the butler who brought the whole of Harry's really assault of other people to an end, because Harry kept on picking up girls who were in beautiful evening dresses that would have cost several hundred or several £1,000s, and they most likely would have had on family jewelry, and kept on throwing them into the swimming pool. And Harry thought it was funny. So Harry has a track record from several different verifiable corroborative sources of actual physical violence. Now, the reason why Harry is alert, in my opinion, to having to rebut this latest story is that he understands that because remember, he and Meghan are having huge problems, and there is no assurance that the marriage is going to survive. And he needs to position himself in such a way that if there is a divorce or if there is a separation, that she cannot use his violence against him legally. So he has to deny it. And he knows that Prince Andrew is not going to be disloyal, because whatever Prince Andrew's fate is, he's never been disloyal. And of course, we can't say the same about Harry, because Harry's middle name is Iscariot. But I think there's that motivation, because Harry and Meghan are not in tandem at the moment, as I know that you know. And he has to protect himself. And I think that's why he has been quick to rebut the story but the irony is, what he is rebutting is where he's the victim. He's not the perpetrator, because Andrew is the one who attacked him, according to the story. So
yeah, I find that fascinating, actually. Yes, he has to deny more examples of physical violence because he knows that his current wife is shopping around the post-divorce book. I mean, it's completely extraordinary. Looking at all of these revelations...
And of course, can I see, Dan? Can I see?
Please.
And of course, if it became convenient for her, she could... He says, oh, well, he had... Oh, Your Honor, he was so violent, I suffered so greatly, and I had to cover it up. That's why I browned myself up constantly, because it really wasn't that I was trying to look darker than I truly was, but I had all those black eyes to cover. Poor little me. Well, of course, everybody knows that she has him, me all whipped to within an inch of his life. But he has to, because she will use stuff like that, whether it's true or not, because Meghan has never limited herself to the facts before.
No.
And any dagger that is lying around, she will use to plunge it right in. And we can just imagine the script that she'll come up with.
Yeah, I mean, it is fascinating when you look at Andrew Laney's book and what Andrew told Harry about his marriage to Meghan Markle, because whatever you think of Prince Andrew, he was right here, Lady C. Let me just read you a couple of the key lines, and I'll get you to respond. So Andrew Laney writes, later Andrew told Harry his marriage to Meghan Markle would not last more than a month, and accused his nephew of going bonkers and not doing any due diligence into her past. He openly accused Meghan of being an opportunist and thought she was too old for Harry, adding that his nephew was making the biggest mistake ever. The source said Harry later told William he hated Andrew. But Lady C, whatever you think of Prince Andrew, his summation of what Harry was doing was completely correct. Now, sure, we know Andrew has, shall we say, oafish delivery at times. Maybe that wasn't the right way to present it. But I mean, can we really criticize Andrew for trying to warn Harry off making the biggest mistake of his life? Well, no, I won't criticize him for that, Lady C. In fact, I'm going to go one step further. I congratulate him for having the balls to tell Harry the truth to his face, because Lady C, there are a lot of other members of the royal family who were saying all of this behind the scenes to each other and not being brave enough to say it to Harry's face. So, look, I know there's a lot to criticize Andrew for. He's made lots of mistakes. But when it comes to him trying to warn Harry off Meghan, I only have praise for him. I really do. And no one's praised him at all this week for anything.
Well, I'm going to back you up on that, because I commend him for having done it. And the fact of the matter is, he didn't do it in a terrible way. I mean, how else are you going to get across the fact that your nephew is making a total idiot of himself and is going to ruin his life? And I mean, to say that Meghan was an opportunist is putting it mild. I mean, he could have used far more cutting words, but he didn't. And he's turned out to be absolutely right in every way, except, of course, the fact that the marriage did last longer than a month. And so there he was wrong. But in every other respect, he was right. And he's not the only member of the family, Dan, as I'm sure you know, who actually tried to talk Harry out of making the biggest mistake of his life. And it's turned out to have not only been a big mistake for Harry, but the mistake Harry made helped to destroy the last months of his grandfather's life, the last years of his grandmother's life, to catapult the British nation into something approximating a racial cauldron. The Commonwealth, it caused no end of problems in the Commonwealth. I mean, I wish I had a pound for every West Indian and African diplomat who came up to me at events and said to me, we can't say this publicly, but please continue what you're doing, because Meghan Markle is absolutely a disaster and she is causing huge problems in our countries with race relations. So, I mean, it was Harry's mistake has not been just a personal mistake. It's been not only a national mistake. It's even in the United States of America, it's been a huge mistake, because let's remember, at the moment, the Americans are starting to look into the way that Harry and Meghan have been abusing their charity's status to provide political support against the regulations, incidentally, of charities, and which is something I've addressed over quite a long period of time. That so even in the United States, I mean, if there is an investigation, and if it turns out that Meghan and Harry broke the law, which indeed they did, because they had no right to be well, let me put it this way: if they've managed to get away with supporting Geoffrey Craig and Ashley Biden, it's because on technical grounds they have not broken the letter of the law, but they have certainly broken the spirit of the law, because charities are not allowed to enter into politics and be politicized, which is what they have been using Archie as a vehicle of for some considerable length of time. So, her disdain for the rules and the regulations that were in place, not only here, but in the United States, so that there would be good governance, are just, astonishing. And he's gone along with it.
Absolutely fascinating analysis.
Nuance gets lost. What remains is the image of a future king allegedly contemplating extreme measures. The reaction has been swift and polarized. For critics of the monarchy, it fuels the narrative that the firm is ruthless and willing to destroy its own for survival. For defenders, it's dismissed as sensationalism, Harry and Meghan spinning stories to paint William in the harshest possible light. Either way, it cements the idea that the royal brothers are not just estranged, they are locked in a Cold War. This allegation couldn't come at a worse time for the monarchy. With King Charles trying to balance tradition and modernity, the image of his sons locked in a feud this toxic undermines the crown's image of unity and stability. If William is portrayed as aggressive and Harry is paranoid, the institution risks losing credibility on both sides.